Golf GTI past its prime? Well, we all know that Volkswagen nailed the GTI formula with the Mark 7 generation of the Golf GTI. But here I have the Mark 8 Golf GTI. So this is meant to be an evolution of that car. Now, this generation of Golf GTI is more expensive than ever and also has more competition than ever from brands like Hyundai and Cupra. So I have one very simple question to answer for this review. Is the Mark 8 Golf GTI still the gold standard for front wheel drive hot hatches, or is it falling behind compared to what everyone else is doing in this segment and at this price point? So let me show you what you're getting for $65,000 when you spend it on a Volkswagen GTI. Personally, I'm a huge fan of the new Mark 8's exterior. It's far more aggressive than the Mark 7, and I really like how it looks. First of all, this front area, you get a light bar, you've got LED headlamps and LED daytime running lights, and I really love those fog lamp designs down below. And as you can see here, there's plenty of hexagons, and that is a theme throughout this car. And also this red trim, which you can see running through the front here as well, indicates that this is the GTI. Now I have to talk about how expensive this car is, because that is a very important point about the new GTI. It is more expensive than its direct rivals, and so that price comes to $65,843 drive away for this car here, because this car has a $300 option for this King's Red metallic paint, and it also has a $3,950 luxury pack, which includes an electrically adjustable driver's seat. It also includes the heated front seats as well, and it also includes the sunroof on this car. So I'll let you decide if it's worth having those two options, but even without those options, this car is still just a few grand more than something like a Hyundai i30N. Now you're getting 18-inch wheels with Goodyear rubber on the outside, and you're also getting red brake calipers, and you're getting a GTI badge here along the side as well. I'm a big fan of the side profile of the Mark 8 GTI. It's just an evolution of what the Mark 7 was, and I like that quite a lot. If we go up close, you can see here we have plastic sporty side skirts. We've also got our keyless entry and exit. We have the Volkswagen logo stamped here as a sticker. We've also got a boot lip spoiler, which you can see here just sort of flicks up at the back. I like that quite a lot. We have our tail lamps here, which are pretty normal looking tail lamps, but we have Golf stamped on the inside there. Then we have GTI spelt across the back. There's no mistaking this car as anything else but. And then towards the bottom, I really love those exhausts. They just look fantastic, so much better than they were on the Mark 6. Obviously, they were very good on the Mark 7, but I do think the Mark 8 does the exhaust exits the best. And here's what they sound like. But of course we have to talk about boot space, because the GTI is known for being the most practical hot hatch. That's part of the appeal. So you flip open the badge like this, like you always have, and it reveals 374 litres of boot space, which is pretty decent, and it's a nice cavernous space with some small bag hooks here, and then underneath here we do have a spare tyre. If you fold down the seats in a 60-40 split, you'll get 1,230 litres of boot space. But what's very practical about this car is it has a ski pass-through, which you can easily press down like this and push open, and that will allow you to put longer items through this car, making it even more practical than some other hatchbacks at this price point. And there's also these small pockets either side of the boot to store small items like this and stop them from flying around if you don't have a net. Now, space in the second row is actually pretty okay. Although if you like legroom up front, you're gonna have to move your seat forward to make room for people on the back. Now I'm sitting behind my driving position, and I have okay amounts of knee room thanks to these cutouts, and my feet room is actually pretty good. Now feet room for the middle seat is gonna be pretty limited thanks to that large exhaust tunnel, but what is good is that we have our own air vents, we have our own climate controls, and we also have a few more pockets here on the back of this seat that you would find on a normal hatchback. And what I do like is that this large door bin has felt on the inside, so no items in there are going to rattle around against the plastic. Instead, they're going to be nice and silent thanks to that thoughtful inclusion. Now your ISOFIX points are very easy to access for any kid seats, and also your windows in the back go most of the way down. Now, more impressively is the fact that if I put my headrest up like this, it's nice and spongy, very good. And you've also got a decent amount of headroom as well. So I'm pretty comfortable in the back here for a long trip as a 5'11" adult. And I like how Volkswagen have padded this area here to make it easier and more comfortable to get in and out of the back seat. But here's where a lot of the changes happen compared to the Mark 7 GTI. First of all, these bucket seats. The design of them is very cool. I do like them a lot. They're a two-piece design, and also I do like the colors on them, even though they might be a bit out there for some people. Now, these are the memory functions and electrical adjustments for this car because it has that luxury pack fitted. And if we jump in here, we can see it does feel a little bit different compared to the Mark 7 generation of GTI. Now, down here in the middle, you do have your push button start, which sort of pulses red, which is kind of cool. You press that and everything comes alive in here. Now, we do have our gear shifter here, which looks very different. Looks like it's ripped straight out of a Porsche 911, and you do have your park button there and all your other controls for your handbrake. Now, down below here, we have a wireless phone charger. We have two USB Type-C ports, and we also do have our screen up here, which is a 10-inch display. We'll talk about that in a second. We have a GTI steering wheel, which feels great in the hand. We have a digital driver's display, but we do not have a heads-up display unless you tick that as an option. I really do like this display here because it's very customizable. You can put any sort of information you want on this. You can even throw your maps up here, which is very good. And you've also got this cool display which will read out the road and show you a display similar to like what you see on a Tesla by showing you other cars on the road and where the lanes are in real time, which I like quite a lot. But I usually like to keep it on this central tachometer, which just feels the sportiest. Now, your cup holders are pretty useful, but unfortunately there's only one set of these extenders here in this area, so it means that only one of your cups is going to stay still in case you decide to take a corner very quickly. We have a 12-volt socket here, which is useful, and our center compartment here is pretty spacious and it's good for smaller items like that, but I do like how comfortable this armrest is. Now, the build quality in here is actually pretty good. Everything feels very tightly put together, and I don't mind the use of materials in here as well. It's pretty plush compared to something like a Hyundai i30N. Now, this little trim piece here does have that honeycomb effect, which is that theme of the Golf GTI, and I actually don't mind the fit and finish of it as well. It goes pretty nicely with the whole interior. I especially do like the vents which run along here, and you do have some ambient lighting which you can change, which runs along here as well and matches the theme of this car's infotainment. Now, let me address some of the common complaints in this car. First of all, this screen. Everyone thinks it is just so unusable. Look, I don't think it's unusable, but I do think it is more frustrating than something that's a little bit more simple. Now, I'll ask you to mentally try and adjust the climate controls. I'll give you about 2 seconds to do that. Cool, you found it? Okay, how would you quickly adjust the fan speed? See, that's the problem. If you found it a little bit difficult and required just a bit more thought than usual, then you'll know that this thing is just a little bit unusable. First of all, I don't know if you even notice these buttons down here. That's for your driving assist buttons, your parking menu, your drive modes, and your climate controls. To be honest, I usually forget they're down here unless I want to change my drive modes. If you want to change anything like your volume controls, there's no knob. You have to slide your hand up and down this little touch sensitive strip, or here on the steering wheel, which is also touch sensitive. Now, here you do have touch sensitive controls for your temperature, and it's just really quite annoying that these aren't backlit at night. So if you don't know exactly where they are, it is a bit hard to sort of guess at night. Now, if I told you to go to the home screen, you probably wouldn't know how to do that because you're looking for any sort of home buttons. But in fact, there's a home button right here, which is like a sideways old school iPhone. And if you press that, it'll take you to your menu. Now, if I said go find settings, you would probably mentally swipe right, but instead you swipe up. If you swipe right, you go to some other menus here, which is just something that I don't access ever unless I'm just looking for something that I can't find. Now, the climate controls I was telling you about, you either press that button here or you press on these buttons here, which just doesn't feel very instinctual. So that's the only problem I have with this screen. It doesn't feel very instinctual. Like it doesn't feel like I'm doing anything out of instinct. Rather, I'm hunting and finding controls, and then it takes a bit of time to get used to. Like I said, it's not unusable. I don't mind the screen at all. I think it's very nice. It looks good, but it could do with a nice little update to the UI to make it just a little bit more logical when you're driving on the road, so you don't have to divert too much thought to what's happening on this screen. Now the standard sound system in here is actually pretty good. I don't think you have to upgrade it unless you really, really want to. I do like these large door bins here. They're fantastic for large water bottles just like that. I actually really like the finish on the pedals here. They look quite premium. And here on the steering wheel, the only thing I wish would be some paddle extenders like we see on the Golf R, because here I'm just really not a fan of these plastic paddles, and I don't know why Volkswagen's been sticking with this design for so long. I love what Hyundai does with their paddles. I love what Cupra does with their paddles. I even like what Volkswagen does with their own paddles on the Golf R, but unfortunately we still get the lame plastic paddles here for the GTI. Now let's talk about the drive modes that we have here. You have Eco, which I never use. I have Comfort, which I use for daily driving, and Sport for when you want a bit more fun out of this car. And you can drive around in Sport as normal, except the ride will be a bit more stiff. So that's where Individual comes in. So if you press Individual here, which I do find these disappear quite quickly, go to Individual and you'll be able to customize your driving experience, which is very good for a road like this, which is a bit more bumpy than normal. So we can change the actual comfort of the suspension to more comfort orientated, but we can keep everything nice and sporty. So that's why I do like Individual mode in a car like this, but you don't really need to adjust this when you're driving in the city if you just want to use Sport. And this is what this sunroof looks like that you're paying extra for. You can see here, it closes above me like that. It doesn't completely shut out, but it is good for blocking out a bit of extra heat. And I do like the touch sensitive controls here, which you use to wipe this open. And it's quite cool. It feels just a bit more premium in here with those sorts of controls. But for some people, they are just a bit too frustrating. And I can completely understand that, but I don't think they're that bad. But Volkswagen is going away from using controls like this on the steering wheel, which are all haptic, because some people complained about accidentally pressing things like the heated steering wheel, or anything over here on the left hand side with your left palm. So to be honest, I don't find them that bad, but Volkswagen is going back to traditional buttons here on the steering wheel, which isn't a bad thing. Now, GTI enthusiasts will be happy to hear that there's still a 2-litre petrol 4-cylinder engine under the bonnet, which is turbocharged, and it sends power exclusively to the front wheels via a 7-speed dual clutch automatic. It produces 180 kilowatts, which is around 244 horsepower, and 370 newton meters of torque, which means this can go 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in 6.4 seconds. Well, we'll see how that tests in just a second. Now, what about the warranty, servicing costs, and reliability? So this comes with a 5-year unlimited kilometer warranty, but it doesn't come with a track day warranty, something that Hyundai offers with the i30N. Now, what about servicing costs? Well, you can prepay for 3 years or 5 years. So 3 years will cost you $1,752, and 5 years will cost you $3,366. And I'd recommend doing that because it does save you a couple of $100 if you plan to own the car for a longer period of time. Now let's talk about reliability, because the previous generation Mark 7 Golf GTI scores a 4 out of 5 from owners on productreview.com.au, who've left reviews of their car there, and they've actually bought the car and lived with it, with most of them praising this car for being an awesome hot hatch they can drive day to day, and also very comfortable for daily driving. But some people complained about the build quality of that generation of Golf GTI, so let's hope that Volkswagen's addressed that with the Mark 8. And the Golf GTI scores a 5 out of 5 from Australia's ANCAP safety rating system. So this is a safe hatchback. So let me talk about my top 3 favorite safety features. First of all, the autonomous emergency braking is really nice and active and actually intervenes when it needs to, but it does alert you in case it doesn't think you're paying attention. So it has lit up a few times in bumper to bumper traffic, but it hasn't had to intervene because I've stepped in beforehand. So that is a nice safety system to have. I also do like the blind spot monitoring in this car. Simple, but yes, very effective, especially when daily driving. And finally, I do like the rear cross braking, which is quite good. So if someone does drive behind you, the car will brake for you, or if it thinks you're going to reverse into a wall, it will do that. Can be a little bit alarming if you're in a tight car space and it does that by itself, but at least it won't cause an accident, which I like quite a lot. And yes, I do think it's worth talking about the key. I really like the Mark 8 generation key. It's really quite heavy, looks quite good, and it feels quite quality. And still, you can do the remote universal unlock, which allows you to pop the sunroof and actually lower the windows just using the key. And then you can lock it all up just by pressing and holding the lock button, which is very useful. So first of all, we're going to test off how the launch control system works in this car. So it's a bit convoluted. First, you have to make sure you're in sport. Then you have to jump into the car's menu and you have to go to vehicle. Once you jump into vehicle, you can go ahead and press exterior. Now you have to swipe right once and you have to click on brakes, and that will put you into ESC Sport. Now that means we have launch control active, which means we pull onto a straight bit of road and we can go ahead and get our car the best start possible, which means foot on the brake, foot on the accelerator, and there you go. So you want to turn off auto hold. The car doesn't like that when it's on. Now, as we go through here, I'm going to talk about a couple of different drive modes. First of all, Eco. It's a very mundane mode, and it's just for fuel savings, really. It's a pretty relaxed mode. I think it's good for daily driving and bumper-to-bumper traffic, but if you're moving along a little bit faster, I'd suggest Comfort, which makes this thing drive like a normal hatchback. But what's more important is Sport mode. So, first of all, the cornering in this car. This thing has a pretty good front limited slip diff, which means that when you go through corners and put power on, this thing likes to stay straight. It anchors down and it just goes through corners as you point it through it. It doesn't really get too upset. And that's one of the biggest praises I can give this car is the feedback through the chassis. The cornering in this thing is nice and flat, but it doesn't feel like the suspension's been over tightened to make this thing so stiff. So this is the longest time I've ever spent in a GTI, and I can tell you that immediately I really love the ergonomics of this car. I feel nice and comfortable in this seat. I found it very easy to find a good, comfortable driving position, and I really love the steering wheel. I love the 9 and 3 grips. They're just a little bit different material from what you're going to find on the rest of this leather steering wheel. And look, this is a very comfortable car, and you can easily see where it's come from. Obviously, it is a Volkswagen Golf. There's no mistaking it for that. And also, you can definitely tell why this car is so popular. It definitely has that everyday usability just in the ergonomics and comfort of this thing. Now, I'm starting off this review in sport mode because that's the mode everyone's going to jump into. And this is the sort of acceleration you can expect from a GTI. It is a lot of fun. There's no denying that. It will put a smile on your face. And this engine likes to play. And you do get that iconic Golf GTI exhaust, which is that little DSG fart which sort of just burbles in between shifts, and it just has a nice sound to it. I really do like the sound of this 2-litre 4-cylinder, and it does do a few pops and bangs on overruns at lower speeds. It's just a really playful engine. Now, the whole suspension setup in here is a bit more stiff than comfort mode, your steering is a bit more responsive, and your engine and gearbox are more responsive to your inputs as well. Now, this is a DSG only model, so there's no manual option, and I do find that very disappointing because I think this car would really sing with a good 6-speed in here. I think that would just be so good. But Volkswagen have sort of coached us into sort of believing that the DSG and Golf GTI pairing is one of the best pairings you can have. They say manuals are more of a thing of the past, and this is more of what Volkswagen's all about. And these brakes are also just quite good for a car like this. They do stop pretty well, but they're just not as beefy as the ones you'll find on the Golf R, but not that you really need them because there's only 180 kilowatts here versus the over 200 kilowatts offered on the Golf R. So yes, the Golf GTI is still an awesome hot hatch, but its competitors might be better off for some people. If you're looking for something a bit more exciting for the price tag that this thing is asking, those cars exist. But if you're looking for something a bit more refined that's still really great to drive, then the Golf GTI is still the pick out of all those cars, because other cars at this price point in terms of those hot hatches are just a little bit too aggressive. So for some people who don't really want that and are looking for a bit more upmarket refinement, that's where the GTI shines. So what do you think? Would you buy one of these? Let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. My name's Cameron, and I'll see you in the next one.